for a long while, I think I've been in a kind of creative wilderness. I haven't really had much of a direction, and over the last kind of year or so, um, I've been kind of touring quite a lot around the world and really, really kind of getting an idea of the sound that I wanted. And also the songs have become a lot more direct and they need the kind of feel of live instruments. I mean, it's sort of, I think lyrically this album's quite passionate. And so, you know, you can't really achieve that with technology. It's got to be a human feeling, and guitars just felt like the right thing. Well, I grew up kind of as a huge Bowie fan, and you know, I was a punk. So I mean, I've always loved guitar music, and I've always bought those type of records. You know, I've always loved bands. You know, so it just feels like for me, it's like going backwards in a way. You know, in terms of the sound to the stuff I grew up with, but lyrically, it's taking it somewhere else. I mean, the songs, while they are in a traditional kind of rock and roll feel, the lyrics are very much modern lyrics about, you know, my life and about sort of things that I can relate to. A lot of the rock and roll that you hear is very much about kind of, you know, ordinary run of the mill things. And I wanted to kind of do a kind of fag rock, if you like, if I had to give it a term. I'm lucky because I don't have a kind of, I've never really had a sound. You know, if you listen to Madonna or the Pet Shop Boys or any number of people, you know what they're going to sound like, even Duran Duran. I'm lucky that I've got quite a versatile voice. I can do lots of things with my voice. And so it gives me a lot more freedom. You know, I mean, Culture Club, although, I mean, Culture Club, the sound of Culture really was my voice. We did all sorts of kinds of styles of music, you know, across the board. So, you know, for me, that's kind of exciting, and it just means that I can try different things. I mean, if you're an artist, you know, no one expects you to paint the same painting all the time. You know, you know, you're expected to kind of challenge yourself and to kind of question yourself. And I think that also applies to musicians, although many of us don't do it. Because we're in the business of selling records, so it's like, well, you know, if I change my sound, then I'm going to lose my audience. But I don't know who my audience are. You know, particularly the British public, because they're so fickle. Do you know what I mean? It's like someone else comes along and it's bye bye. So you know you can't rely on your audience. You have to just kind of do what you feel. Well, Jesus Loves You was a way for me to do something slightly different, you know, and I still keep that going. You know, I like the idea of projects and doing other things. You know, I mean, I like that when other bands do that, like the Banshees did with the Creatures, and I like that when bands do that. I think it's interesting because it gives them kind of a certain amount of freedom. That's really the only reason. Jesus Loves You was like my way in through the back door. You know, after Culture Club, it was like, you know, what do I do? And so I felt like it was a good idea to sort of have a pseudonym, and it was like it said that there wouldn't be a big spotlight on me. And I think having done that, you know, I've really learned a lot about what I can and cannot do. And I think that that's kind of enabled me to come back to feeling kind of confident about being Boy George. I mean, it was very important for me to do the Jesus Loves You stuff. I got involved in a lot of production. You know, I'm running a dance label called More Protein, and that all that stuff has kind of helped me to build up my confidence. And I think the most important thing about this album is that I have, for the first time in about 10 years, got an absolute direction. And you see, in the past, I've blamed the record company for everything that's gone wrong with my career. You know, it's their fault. They didn't do this and they didn't do that. Well, now I've come to the conclusion that it's not to do with anybody else. It's to do with me. And I have seen that now that I have total clarity about what I want to do, it's affected everything around me. And it really is that simple. It sounds kind of like mad, but it you know, it's happening and it has happened, and I know that it's true. And that's been a kind of personal discovery as well, because I think for a long time in my life, I blamed other people for the things that went wrong in my life. Well, now I'm at the point where I realise that's giving other people too much credit. That in actual fact, you know, if you like, destroyed my career. You know, and I made myself who I am, and I have control to a certain extent, and that's kind of a quite a nice feeling. Far, rather than being a scary feeling, it's actually a good feeling. Well, I'm always writing songs. I don't sort of sit down and say, well, I'm going to make an album. I write all the time, very much on a kind of autobiographical level. I'm always writing about my relationship or my problems or things that I see in my immediate environment or things I see on the news, whatever. Um, but I definitely wanted this album to be, I suppose, more relevant and more open, to my life. I wanted to sing about, my sexuality and my feelings, but in a kind of very traditional, melodic way. I mean, I've always written in a very traditional way. I'm not Philip Glass. I write songs with verses and bridges and choruses. I'm very much attracted to the idea of that kind of Tin Pan Alley songwriting style, because I grew up with that. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, I used to watch all those kind of Busby Berkeley movies, and the songs that we had in our house were, Frank Sinatra, Peggy Lee, all that kind of stuff. So I love all that stuff, and I like structure, there's nothing I hate more than going to a concert and listening to someone do a 4-hour solo. I like to hear a song, start, middle, end. I'm very much like that. And so that will always be in my writing, but what I want to do is take those kind of traditional elements and write different types of lyrics. I think probably the only person who's done any kind of intelligent rock and roll in the last 20 years is Kurt Cobain, and unfortunately he's no longer with us. But he's the only person, to my mind, that's really challenged any of the stereotypes. And I think that was a big inspiration to me, some of his lyrics. What more can I say? Everyone is gay. And other things like, I'm so ugly, but that's okay, so are you. It's like taking the way that he wrote about love, because love isn't all the way it is in pop songs. It is about arguments and fighting and bad breath in the morning. And so that's what I'm aiming for, to be a bit more gritty. My favourite type of songwriters, are people like Joni Mitchell and Bob Dylan and Morrissey, because I think they have a really direct and unusual slant on life, and that really inspires me to kind of improve my lyrics. I've been very conscious of making this album into a whole album. The last couple of albums that I've made have been very kind of busy and neurotic and like recorded at different times. The tracks were recorded like some in January and then some in November. And I think a record needs some kind of continuity. It needs to have a kind of wholeness to it, which is something that I haven't had before, for a while anyway. I mean, Culture Club, we had that. But it's been definitely missing for a while, and I was very conscious of that. I had an incredible meeting about a year ago with a guy called Todd Rundgren. He's an American kind of rock star producer. And it was like intense therapy, because I was going to use him for this album, and I had this meeting with him in his house in San Francisco. And he said to me, he was criticising my songs, like talking about my songs, and he said, you're very lazy. And at the time I was mortally offended that he'd said that to me, but I went away and I thought about it. I really thought about what he'd said. And I understood what he meant, was that I was kind of half committed a lot of the time to what I do. And so with this record, I went for it, hammer and tong. I was there every minute of the day. And, I very much thought about what it was going to sound like before I did it. It wasn't like, let's just go in and make some tracks. It was like, this is what it's going to be about. This is what the songs are going to be about. And I've thrown stuff off the record because, even stuff that's quite good, because I just felt like it doesn't suit the record. And I think that's important, And I suppose, in a way, it's credit to the fact that I've learned to listen a bit more. Well, it seems in my life I've always been attracted to kind of boys that are trouble, kind of beautiful boys who are kind of more trouble than they're worth, basically. It says in the song, a princess, a car thief, and a lost shoe. And there's another reference in there, glue for the broken toy, wings for the saint. In other words, like, you're attracted to these people that are kind of a bit messed up, and you're the carer, you're the mother, you're the saint, and you kind of, it's almost like you immerse yourself in other people's problems as a way of avoiding your own, and also as a way of being needed. I think women probably would understand that a lot more than men would, because women definitely have that kind of inherent kind of nurturing side to them. We take care of people. I mean, it sounds like I'm talking to myself as a woman, but that's the quality that I have of, like, kind of picking up, attracting wounded people. And that's what the song's about. Cheapness and beauty, trickery and lies. Like, no matter how much abuse you have thrown at you, and no matter how many complications there are, you keep going back to it. In the song I say, it's much too late to say goodbye, despite all good advice. It's like, it seems like I'm caught in this trap. And that's what the song's about. That's what the album's about. I mean, if you listen to all the songs on the album, they're all about that experience. Well, I think that the book definitely stirred up memories. And one of the important things I had to do was to question myself now. Because, like, all those years ago, I did pretty much see myself as a victim of circumstance. So if you look at the songs I used to write, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? Victims. I very much played that role and believed myself to be a victim. Having been through kind of heroin addiction and some very heavy experiences in my life, I've come out the other end of that, and I've had to look at it and say, well, how was it really? How what really happened? And writing the book, obviously my co-author, Spencer Bright, was very instrumental in pushing me and saying, come on, is this really what happened? And so the book totally changed shape halfway through writing. It was like it changed shape, and a lot of the stuff had to be rewritten, truthfully, because I became aware that if I was going to write about other people in an honest way, I would also have to be quite brutal about myself. And that really affected the songs, because obviously I was writing about old boyfriends or old relationships or old situations, and it was like, yeah, this would be a good song. So the two things kind of really encouraged each other. It was kind of, I don't know if therapy is the right word, but catharsis probably is a better word. Coming out in every way, I think, sort of, I think that when I used to write songs in Culture Club, I was in my own way trying to be very open, but my sort of songwriting ability wasn't that developed. Now it's kind of really come into itself. I mean, I hope it will continue to get more direct, more clear. But I feel like, having gone through all the things I've been through, there's such a lot to say and there's such a lot to express. And so in that respect, I suppose it is a coming out record, But I think we're not coming, because I came out when I was 16. I mean, my parents knew I was gay when I was 16, so it's never, ever been a secret in my private life. I mean, all my friends, everyone has always known. It's never like I had one. I mean, in some ways I did have kind of a sort of public identity, but I mean, if anyone could look at me as I looked in Culture Club and thought I was straight, well, then they really are a bit stupid. But it is incredible how many people think I am straight. People ask my brothers, is he really gay? It's like, what do I need to do to convince them? You know what I mean? But I think that what it's really to do with is that I've come to terms with a lot of things about myself. I am comfortable with the choices that I've made in my life. For years I walked around kind of with a bit of an inferiority complex, which I compensated by being full of it. But actually, big part of me felt like people didn't like me because I was gay and were making judgments about me. And because I felt that way about myself, I attracted that a lot of the time. And what's happened now is that I've come to the conclusion that it really isn't a big deal, you know. And because I feel comfortable with my sexuality and with my life in general, I don't attract that kind of animosity. I mean, I'm not saying I don't attract Annie, because, you know, there's some stuff, you know, there are mad dogs out there. But on the whole, you know, it's like your energy and your attitude about yourself has such an effect on other people. I mean, if you walk around feeling like, well, you know, I'm a piece of shit, that's going to be your reality. And it is as simple as that. It sounds crazy, you know, but once you start to experience it, it's such a relief. Well, I got arrested at Heathrow Airport, there's a whole story about that in the book. When I was 15, I had a boyfriend, and he was like 25, and I got arrested going to meet him coming back from a holiday, and I had all these letters on me, and it was the worst type of way you can think of for your parents to find out. And in fact, what was shocking to me really was that they dealt with it quite quickly. I mean, certainly at first, you know, they were really disturbed, and they thought I'd been abducted, and they got the police involved. But finally, they did come round, and okay, for a long time they didn't talk about it, but they eventually, long time before I became successful, they had accepted that I was gay. But I've made it very much a conscious decision when I was a kid, you know, that if they didn't accept me, they would be out of my life, because I couldn't have lived with that. And I know a lot of, you know, gay girls and boys, you know, have problems with their parents. You know, their parents maybe accept it, but they don't want to talk about it. But that isn't accepting it. You know, that's not accepting. And that is very painful. And I couldn't live with that. And I really do actually feel very privileged and lucky that my mother and father, you know, are dealing with it. You know, they deal with it. And what this song is saying is that, you know, I'm pretty sure that if there is a God, you know, and if Jesus did exist, that he wasn't homophobic, you know, that he, all right, at best he probably didn't know any nice queers, but the fact is, you know, some of the attitudes of Christianity towards women have had to change. Therefore, it seems to make sense that attitudes towards gay relationships also have to change. You know, in order for the church to go forward in any way, it's going to have to change, because there are thousands of gay priests, you know, and there are thousands of gay Christians, and, you know, there's nothing ever, it's always been there and it always will be there. So what the song is saying is that, you know, I'm sure that, you know, God, if there is a God, however you want to perceive him, her, it, that, you know, he accepts us for who and what we are, you know. And that's what I'm trying to say in that song. You know, I love against the gods, apparently, but I'm not scared. But then there is a part of me that is scared. There is a part of me that, I suppose, because I've been brought up with, you know, bits of the Bible, you know, that kind of Christian guilt is kind of embedded in my psyche. So there's a part of me that feels like, well, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am loving against the gods. Maybe I am going to end up in purgatory. I mean, I don't take that seriously, but it's there. You know, it is there. So it's more of a question, you know. And I am very fascinated by the whole religious thing, you know, because I think in essence, you know, I don't really like the word religion, but certainly faith and spirituality have a very important role to play in our lives. And it seems as if religion does its best to kind of make, you know, to make us kind of fear our feelings and fear having relationships, particularly if you're homosexual. So it's kind of something that I do think about a lot, you know, because obviously I've been involved in different kind of, you know, faiths and religions, and I feel like I've learned some really incredible, important things that have really shaped my life. But then there's a lot of other things that I just can't abide with. I can't accept. It's a very kind of traditional, almost like a Beatles type song, you know. If you were to hear that on the radio, you wouldn't necessarily think about what it was about. So it's kind of subversive in the sense that it kind of creeps up on you. A bit like, say, Happy Birthday by Stevie Wonder, which is about Martin Luther King. It's like, it's a great pop song with a kind of underbelly. And that's the idea of this song. It came about after watching a video of the last year's Gay Pride rally. There was this section on it with this lesbian who was saying, I don't want equality, I'm special. And I just said to myself, how we become our oppressors. And I thought, I was thinking for ages and ages. What I do is I often think of the title. What's the title of the song going to be? And I thought, same thing in reverse. It's a nice title. And that's how the song came about. But it was because of watching that video. I thought, this is ridiculous. You know, we're all the same. You know. But having said that, I think it's really important that we celebrate our individuality. I mean, I think one of the biggest problems we have in our society is that people are frightened to be individual. You know, you go to school and you become part of a classroom. I mean, I suffered very much at school because I was high-spirited. I had a lot of personality. And when you're a teacher teaching 30 kids and one's got too much personality, it becomes difficult. And that's very, very much my experience in my life, that I often had too much spirit for work, too much spirit for school. And what I've come to discover is that a lot of the problems in our society are because people try to stifle their individuality. It's like, you know, you get a job, you become a secretary, you become a businessman, and you live totally in that environment. And there's no outlet for creativity. There's no outlet for any other experiences. And I think it destroys lives, it destroys marriages, it destroys careers. You know, I mean, I look at my mother, you know, it's like, and my father, you know, because they had to work hard. You know, it's like almost like my dad is an extremely intelligent person. And very often when intelligence is stunted, it explodes and comes out in aggression. You know, and, you know, I see that very much in my own life and in my parents' lives and in a lot of my friends. You know, and it's like all the killers in the world, they're all normal. So-called normal. I mean, they don't have pink dreadlocks and pierced noses. They're normal people, you know, they don't, you know, they could be your next door neighbor. So there's something very kind of scary about normality, you know, and that's something that I've really felt for a long time. And it's definitely becoming clearer and clearer to me that, you know, the people who try hardest to conform are the ones with the problems. They're mad. No, I felt like I could do it justice, you know. And it's kind of an unusual cover. It's not like, you know, there's a lot of Iggy Pop songs that would probably be more obvious. But I like the sentiment of it. I like, you know, it's quite sexy and quite irreverent as well, and quite sort of, you know, kind of a bit sarky. And I like the idea of all aboard for fun time. I like the idea of that. You know, it's like, so that's kind of how I feel. You know, I feel like enjoying myself for a while. And you know, the fact that it was a kind of Bowie, Iggy song as well. I mean, I'm a big Bowie fan, and it's just one of those songs from my childhood. You know, like from when I was younger and going out to clubs, and I still go out to clubs, but you know, it's like just that it sort of brings back a lot of memories for me. And it's, you know, it is funny because it was recorded really quickly, and you know, we're really messing around with all the keyboards and making all these noises and just making it really anarchic. And it just, I think it works because of that we didn't sit down thinking about it too much. But then a lot of this record, it hasn't been like, you know, certainly I've done a lot of thinking before I've recorded them, but it's been recorded in a totally different way to anything I've done before. Absolutely. I mean, I bore very easily in studios, I have to say. You know, I mean, all through the years, if things aren't kind of happening quickly, I just lose concentration. So I have to fight with myself to be there and commit myself. And I'm very lucky because I've got a great writing partner who absolutely connects to me mentally and sort of emotionally and understands exactly what I'm going for, whilst also putting a lot of himself into it and that's really good. I mean, John and I have been writing together for about 4 years now, and we've been talking about doing this album all that time. You know, he's been saying to me, when are we going to make this record? But it hasn't felt right until now. And yeah, I think it will continue. I think that he's going to be definitely a lifetime writing partner. I knew that Jessica had worked with a lot of kind of young bands. So I knew she wasn't going to be your typical kind of, right, let's give you a hit. You know, I didn't want somebody coming in and interfering in the kind of creativity. I wanted somebody who would help me to get the sound that I wanted, and she's definitely done that. You know, I can absolutely 100% say this record sounds how I want it to sound, and that is a rare and beautiful thing, believe me, because I've had a lot of experiences where I've had a total vision of something and it just hasn't come out as I wanted it to. This record sounds how I wanted it to sound. It sounds exactly how I heard it before I made it. And so that's been her contribution to this record. Yeah, the label does excite me. It's brilliant. And, you know, it's very exciting to be around people when they're just starting out and they're making their first record. I mean, I met a little girl in a club 4 months ago called Lippy Lou, and she's a rapper and sings, and now she's made her first record. And to watch that happening, it's brilliant. Because, like, you know, she's saying, my God, record sleeve. I mean, I went through that myself. This is my record, you know, hearing it in a club, doing PAs. You know, she's just been to San Francisco. She's just been to France. It's great, you know. And I'm very much conscious of quality control, you know, like making sure that the music we put out is really thought about, that it's not just any old crappy dance track. I mean, I DJ, so, you know, I'm very particular about what I play. I play stuff that I think is good. I don't play stuff that I think is obvious. So the stuff that we make on the label, I try to make sure it has some kind of consciousness, it has some kind of message, and that's so far so good. I just feel like I'm quite lucky, you know, because I do, you know, I mean, I've said this for years, but I do feel it now that I do something that I love doing. I get paid for it, silly money. I get to travel around the world. I get to meet really nice people and eat great food and, you know, just do all these sorts of things that I definitely dreamed about when I was a kid. You know, I literally used to dream about going off to these different things and doing all these different things. And I often feel a bit like a voyeur, you know, where I'm like, I'm there, but I'm not there. I always feel like I'm sort of watching everything and just often feel like a little kid, you know, where I sort of get to do things and I think this is so funny. And I think in Culture Club I did at a certain point take it all for granted, whereas now I don't. So having it kind of ripped all away from me, I tend to look at it differently now and think, this is great. I'm really lucky. So it's really a question of being, just getting on with it, enjoying it. Well, I want the label to do well. That's one of the things that I really want to do, and I'd like to get more and more involved in the kind of the rear end of rock and roll, to sort of get involved in running a label and having that be successful. That's what I'd really like, and get more and more into production, you know, because obviously, you know, I can't go on being Boy George forever, but it's good to have other interests as well. You know, I want to open a restaurant. That's one of the things I want to do, hopefully this year in London, and just keep busy, you know, just kind of do different things. You know, it's like what I say in the bio, Marxist theory, you know, where you just don't have one job. I think it's a very healthy approach. It would be great if people could sort of, you know, have like maybe do a job at a bank in the morning and then work with kids in the afternoon, like have variety, be so much healthier. I certainly feel that I benefit from variety.